washing machines for stamping to eliminate the dust, and then to apply a specific stamping oil. This is very important to control the powdering. Also, the dyes which are made, the dyes which are used for stamping, they are very expensive dyes. Typically, a dye costs for one set of dyes costs for anything between 4 to 8 crores, depending upon the size of the dye. So there are specific recommendations. So to prevent because GA is a very hard and abrasive coating. So you need some surface treatment of dyes. For example, hard chromium, hard chrome dyes, TiCN dyes. These type of dyes should be used so that the dye life is ensured. So we have also, we give certain recommendations for the draw beads and the blank holders. The blank holders typically need to be about 5 millimeter larger than the cold rolled steel because of the drawability of this material. The roughness of the active surfaces has to be same in order of sheet steel. So for example, the galvanneal surface roughness is about 0.7 to 1 millimeter, and the roughness of the active surface should be same to prevent extra abrasion. So these are some of the recommendations, and of course we have other recommendations for frequency and method of cleaning. I can relate an example that, for example, in Toyota, when they are stamping skin panels, after about 300 panels, there is a siren which rings and the press automatically opens, and with the pneumatic hose, it is automatically clean. So this is very important, because if you keep on stamping, then the powder might accumulate and then you start getting dents. But if you have a proper frequency and you open the die and just pneumatic cleaning is done, and that cleaning is less than 30 seconds, you can actually use this good material. There are some degreasing recommendations which we give, and we tell them to remove oil by properly degreasing it, and of course to periodically check for the efficiency of degreasing, which is the water break test. There is, in case of coated steels, both for galvanized as well as galvanneal, there is a tendency to have a thin alumina layer on the surface. Now this is very important, that particular alumina layer has to be digested, and this can be digested only by fluorine or fluoric acid. So there is a small amount of fluoric acid which has to be put, otherwise you don't get the phosphatation right, and hence if your phosphatation is not right, then your corrosion resistance, which I talk about, the perforation corrosion, can be compromised. So this is a change which we tell the automakers to put a little bit of free fluorine in the bath, typically about 0.22 to 0.5 grams per liter, and this takes care of the alumina layer. Yeah. This is one particular problem which is very typical of galvanneal. It is called cratering and pinholes. It happens during the e-coating or the ED paint, and the answer to this lies in reducing the voltage. So the voltage or the potential difference by which the ED paint is deposited onto the body has to be reduced. So the answer is, or the solution is, that the automaker, if he knows this, then he can easily use this material by having typically 200 to 260 volts against 340 volts for bare steel. There are other things which we tell the automakers is to decrease the viscosity of the ED paint and increase the flow performance. So all these, so to say, shortcomings of GA have already, so to say, been overcome. And if the automaker is using it for the first time, then as Tata Steel, we do give these recommendations to them. So, and we work very closely with them to improve the performance or to get the right performance of the coated steels. There are certain recommendations also to stamp GA. This is also a little bit technical. And there are only two major sources. One could be pollution, another could be degradation. So the pollution is you should transport or storage, cutting and pelletization. These are all mechanical damages, because any mechanical damage which happens, it will allow the powder to fall onto the blank and then you can get a dent. Same is the case of degradation, where when you're loading it onto the press or when you're storing the parts, you have to have the cushions or the insulation materials always on those, so that there is no pollution which is there. Another important thing which I spoke about between GI and GA is the spot weldability. Now, in case of both GI and GA, you need to have transformers which will be able to deliver the current intensity up to 13 kiloamps. The bare steel, which is the one which is used in India, can be easily welded at even 8 kiloamps. So if the automaker is wanting to shift, then he has to use the higher capacity transformers, and it has to have a facility to step it up. The automatic dressing of electrodes. These are some of the recommendations which the automaker has to use, and then they can easily transit from uncoated steel onto galvannealed steels. This I already talked about, that we recommend a tricationic phosphate with fluorine addition, and this is done at the phosphatation bath so that they get the 12-year perforation corrosion warranty. The paint appearance in case of GA can be same as what is electrogalvanized or CR. And in that case, the steelmaker has to ensure that waviness, this is the surface waviness, and this is what we control at our plant. And it is possible to have the same paint appearance as in GA and EG. The last part I come to is the automotive coated outlook for India. And as you can see that there is a lot of promise, and Ken, I think, very rightly mentioned that about 1 million tons of exposed panels and about 1.3 million tons of structural, internal, large, small structural reinforcements, this is required. So definitely the other part is that high tensile steels is also required. So the high tensile steels essentially for weight reduction as well as for reduction of GHG gases or GHG emissions. So the automakers want to shift now to coated steels for corrosion resistance, but also want high tensile coated steels. Now that presents another big challenge, because to produce high strength coated steels is is more challenging than to produce cold rolled high strength steels. So what we see here is that yes, the demand for coated steels will rise, and this is how the graph, this is our own team analysis. Also, there will be a lot of usage of high tensile coated steels. So, typically even in case of like what Ken mentioned, that skin panels, people used to use only very soft steels. Now people say, no, we want to use high strength steels. I can tell you, about 10 years back, the door of the car was made from 0.8 millimeter. Now people have come to 0.65. Safety has not been compromised. It is just that the high strength steels have started to be used, and the demand for high strength steels will continue because cars will have to be made more safer. You have to have less GHG emissions in the cars. And though there is no such regulation in India, what works in India is like that Maruti ad, na, kitna deti hai? So how much does a car give? But of course, I always tell my automaker friends is that if you reduce the weight of the car and you pile 8 people inside the car, I've seen Maruti 800 में भी 8 आदमी घुस जाता है हम लोग. So then you will not really make any difference to the GHG emissions, but very important for India, and Indian automakers have taken it up to use high tensile steels and high tensile coated steels. So just to summarize and sum up my presentation, coated steels in India, yes, definitely there will be a lot of demand. There are currently 3 galvanizing lines, what Ken showed. So Tata Steel, then you have POSCO Maharashtra, and the JSW line which is just coming up. These are the 3 lines which are capable of making automotive coated steels. And high tensile steel is growing. There is GA or galvannealed, which is more preferred in India because of the Japanese and the Korean transplants. And I talked about what can be done and what are the advantages and disadvantages of galvannealed, and what can we do to overcome those disadvantages. So this disadvantage is for a person who is starting up. If the steel manufacturer makes GA for the first time, he has to go through a learning curve. If the automaker uses for the first time, he has to go through the learning curve. But elsewhere, like for example in Japan, Korea, also in United States, galvannealed is easily used. It's a good material, and there is this 12 years of perforation guarantee which can be administered to this particular material. So I'd like to end my talk by saying that yes, the situation is good, looks bright, We just have to, the automakers and the steel makers just need to get together. And of course, if there are some regulations, like what we see that there are some crash regulations which are being discussed, like the Euro NCAP ratings. Maybe India will also go for a ASEAN NCAP ratings, and we will have safer cars and we have more corrosion resistance cars. Thank you.
And they have presented that what are the differences between GA and GI, and how we can take advantage of the present situation where the growth is already there. I'm finding myself privileged that I have two panel members along with me. One of them is making a steel, they are the largest galvanized steel manufacturers for the car segment. And I have another panel member who is the who are the largest car manufacturer in India. I will request Mr. Deepak Thakral to give his presentation on what is the Maruti's view as a car manufacturer on the galvanized steel and automobile sector. I have found very interesting presentation, very interesting point from Mr. Avtar Singh's presentation. But I would like to keep this session open after the presentation of Maruti. Let us see what are their view on the galvanizing car, and then I will ask audience to give their views on what is required. And this is a very interesting session. I would like all of you to participate. Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm Deepak Thakral from Maruti Suzuki, and I'll give my view on now usage of GA steel. I think the previous two speakers have said most of the things, and I'll only endorse what they have said. So it won't be much different from that, but endorsement from us means that, of course, what they are saying is what we are really doing. So the usage is definitely going to go up for GA steel. Let's see how it is. One more thing. In the morning, the beautiful lady said that GA, how many of you are using cars made of GA? But in fact, today, they also confirmed, I also said that every car has some amount of GA today. So whichever car you drive, it has some GA definitely in it. So I think we are not marketing it pretty well now. But fact is there's GA in every car today, which this will also show now. So my thing will be, I'll just talk about Maruti Suzuki for some time. Then I'll talk about the industry trends, and then, of course, our perspective on GA. So about our company, we have a capacity of today 1.5 million. We have two locations. One is Gurgaon, and second is Manesar, and both plants have equal capacity, 0.75 million. And generally, we have something like within the location, we have plants. So we have 3 plants in Gurgaon and 3 in Manesar today. Second is we also, have recently augmented our diesel engine capacity. It moved from 300,000 to 450,000 now. Of course, petrol engines also we make in-house. So this is what it is. And then if you look at our entire supply chain, then we have around 300 local suppliers. We have 70 overseas suppliers, more than 70. And then from the output side, we have more than 1,100 sales outlets, and service outlets also 3,000. And our total turnover is more than 42,500 crores, something like that. So this is about Maruti now. Now, if you look at our company, our history, we have completed 30 years now, and we have more than 13 million satisfied customers. Our market share is in excess of 40%. And of course, now we are also moving to Gujarat in near future. And then if you look at the major milestones, then of course, we are the first company to make 1 million cars per year. This we achieved in 2010. Then network, being the biggest car maker, we have the biggest network in the country. And out of the top 5 models, 4 models are of Maruti, which are being sold in India. And then we are also setting up, we recently came out with something called Celerio, which is a big hit, where we used, we call it an AGV, automated manual transmission, which we call it here, and which means that it's a very cheap way of, giving flexibility to the customer so that he can shift gears automatically. Then we also have coming up with a facility in Rohtak, which will be the biggest R&D facility here. And then the biggest endorsement from the customer. We have been winning CSI for last 14 years in a row. And also SSI, we are number 1. So I think this is about Maruti. Now, if you look at the automotive landscape, India is definitely poised for big growth. We are number 2 in two-wheelers, buses in buses to number 2, cars we are number 6. Being the second largest population in the world, definitely there's a lot of potential for selling more and more cars and of course automobiles in the country. Now, this is a slide which was, we call it as Automotive Mission Plan 2016. This was set up, this was made by the government in the year 2006. As per this, in 2016, we were supposed to touch a total turnover of $145 billion US. But though we had a good growth up to 2009 or 9-10, but then after that things slowed down. Last 2-3 years have been typically, we had almost flat growth. But now this year again looks little promising, and we expect that 10% growth is here. Of course, with a stable government, and we had a budget also yesterday, and the government supporting the sector, we see that things will be better now, and definitely demand will grow. So what are the prospects? If you look at, of course, I said the industry will grow, both domestic and export. Many OEMs are using India as a base for exporting cars also. The customer is looking for choices. He wants more and more options today. There is a lot of competition, and the penetration is still low. We are at 18 per 1,000, and there's a long way to go. So we definitely see that there is a lot of scope for selling more and more cars. Now, moving towards your topic on GA a little bit. See, we need to look at the design of our cars. We need to improve the design of our cars so that we are able to deliver a good performance and good quality for our cars. And definitely, one is the quality which we manufacture, and one is also the perceived quality, which was talked out by the previous speaker, that when he said that when people go to showroom and buy a car, and then they say that, okay, let's get some coating done on it. That's a perceived value which one derives. If we are able to generate that perceived value right at the selling at our stage only, then definitely the sales will go up. That's how we see, and that's the change is happening now. People are a little bit concerned about safety, and they want better features in the cars. So that's what is happening now. And then, of course, today we have a lot of pressure. We need to improve fuel efficiency. We need to look at emission reduction, safety. We have to improve cost. We have to keep low. Features have to come new. So, but it's conflicting. If you look at one aspect, the other aspect goes up or down. So we have to balance between all the 5 aspects. And it's true for any industry, not mine. Everywhere else, the same problem is there. So now, based on whatever I said till now, let's look at what is automotive steel all about for us, and what request I have from you. So as I said in my previous slides, the customer expectation is going up, and the government rules are also being more and more stringent. So that means that, and definitely, when we are looking at a fuel economy, we are looking at appearance, we are looking at cost reduction, and wherever we look at any of these parameters, the steel industry definitely gets impacted, because if you're looking at fuel economy, then that means we need weight reduction. If we need weight reduction, that means we have to go in for high tensile steel, and that means the steel industry should be there to give us those kind of steels. If you look at corrosion resistance, then we need GA or GI, depending on which OEM uses what. So definitely we have a lot of demands from the steel industry today. And if we summarize what I said in the previous slide, basically it is about reducing the weight of the car, increasing the strength of the car, giving more and more rust warranty, as is being done abroad also, and reduce the cost. These are the 4 things which are the key challenges for us, which will impact us now. Now, when we say that about perceived quality, and which was mentioned earlier also, I think the customer is also looking at, he's looking at rust prevention deep in the vehicle cycle. That means he's not happy with, that after some years if his car shows marks of rusting. So he wants that, he or she wants that the car should have a long life, at least body. There should not be any rusting anywhere. And that's where we look at a lot of applications which we can have for improving this thing. And of course, galvanized steel is one of the very important thing for us. Since we come from a Japanese background, so we use only GA more or less everywhere. So let's see where all we use GA today. If you look at a typical car today, the underbody, which we say, where there are the cross members and the reinforcements, these use GA today. And most of our cars today, which we sell in the market, these parts have been converted into GA now to provide more and more better quality to our customers. So definitely, this was not there, say, around 2 years back, but now most of the underbody are in GA. So if you look at the older generation models, maybe this GA was 2%, but now the new models which are coming have between 15 to 20% GA definitely. At whatever we are launching now or whatever we are producing now, have this range of GA today. And if we compare with respect to exports, definitely exports also because of the environment there, they need more GA. So the export vehicle, and of course the warranties they offer is much more. So that it is that in export, almost 70% of GA is being used today. Whatever cars we export, there is the GA content is up to 70%. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of potential for GA to go up in times to come. And of course, as said earlier also, there is a shift towards high tensile steel. Of course, for the fuel efficiency to improve, we need to use high tensile materials more and more now. And the range is going up to 980 in our case. That's how we look at usage. So if you see, the future demand which we see coming now is in GA, and then we also have something like high tensile. And then in that high tensile, we have ranges going up to 780 and 980 also. So the future is all about high tensile and GA applications going up significantly in auto companies. But of course, when we say that we want to use GA, we also want to be competitive. So we have done some comparison because today we use both imported GA as well as local GA in our plant. And we see that the premium which is being charged by though of course Indian GA is cheaper than I don't say that Indian GA is not cheaper than what we import today, but the premium which is being charged is higher in case of domestic companies. Suppose if we take the base as 100 for CR and then we try to build the premium for GA, the GA which is being charged by the Indian companies is higher than what is being charged by the global companies. So our request is that this premium has to be brought down. Of course, as the number of players increase in the country, this will come down. And then, of course, to mitigate the foreign exchange risk, we look at localization of high tensile steel, GA steel, and galvanized high tensile steel. All three, we need to have more and more players in the country. We need to have more and more capacity in the country. And because we are going to use, so we need this in India so that we are able to mitigate the foreign exchange risk also. So, already said previously, there are only 3 steel mills today who provide limited range, and they also provide limited range. They don't provide the entire range of GA today. So, we request that we need more quantity and we need more range of grades, and of course, more players also required. The approval cycle is also pretty long. It is not that you come and then we approve it. It takes a long time to approve a new steel mill for our GA applications because of the complexities involved. So definitely, the faster the better for us. So if I try to summarize, Maruti also sees that there's going to be a major shift in usage of steel in next 5 years. It will be more of, we expect that GA is definitely going to go up. And of course, as we align ourselves with the global environment, definitely in our country also, the GA will definitely gradually move up to that level only. Third is that we also need to look at providing high tensile steel to us, and high tensile coupled with GA is again another big requirement coming up going forward. And definitely request is that we need support in terms of readiness to supply us this material and also being competitive in terms of pricing. So I think if you compare my slide and what's said by previous speakers, it's only endorsement of what they said, that yes, and we accept that the trend is changing now in India and there is more and more requirement of special steels for different applications. So I think this is all which I had to say from my side. Thank you very much, and if any questions, I'll take up later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thakrar. It was a really very impressive presentation, and we could see the growth is there in the car market, and that will help us in improving productivity and use of galvanized and GA steel in the car market. However, there is a question that whether GA is better or GI is better. I have Dr. Frank here to support me in replying to this question that which is the best material for the car manufacturing. I will request Dr. Frank to give his view.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Mahata. It's a pleasure to be here and join the group of experts we have on automotive steel. You've heard from them, and you've heard from Ken yesterday in his talk. There's full agreement that we're migrating to higher strength steels. These steels must be galvanized, and that's very good news. That's going to transform the industry in India with the use of coated steels and also, of course, the lighter weight steels that will be allowing better fuel economy and performance. But there's a threat for an even greater transformation, and that is the transformation to an aluminum body. We already see this moving to a large scale in the United States, and if we are not successful in meeting customer demands with the steel-based, even the advanced steel-based automobiles, we are going to see this industry moving to aluminum, and I'll tell you a bit about the reasons for that, some of the forces for that in this talk. So it's an automotive presentation, so it's appropriate to say fasten your seatbelts, and let's go into the talk. So we'll talk about, first of all, the need for steel and the steel developments we have here. And this, I'll move quickly through this because this really is just a repeat of much of what you've heard. And the lightweighting challenge, then I'd like to spend most of the time on that. Then something we've not talked about here in this conference is general galvanizing. We have many here in general galvanizing, and we do see general galvanizing being used for underbody components and what it means for the future. Until the mid-1950s, in both the USA and Europe, if you went a long distance, you'd go there by train. It was not really until the development of the long-distance road system in North America and Europe and the increase of car ownership that there was a demand to keep roads open during all year round, and this led to an increase in the use of de-icing salt. And what we see here is the growth from the 1950 up to 1988 of the tons, millions of tons of salt that are used for de-icing in the USA. Now, this was just up to the point where the decision to use coated steel was made. It has increased further beyond that. There are you can really measure it in tons per mile of de-icing salt that's used. That means a lot of corrosive electrolyte, and we need to protect against this because we demand that roads are open all year. Of course, car ownership has increased greatly since then, and there's certainly a demand to keep those rust-free. You've seen pictures like this before in Dr. Singh's presentation. We had the first initiatives to have anti-rust treatment by Volvo in 1956. They had the first fully welded body with an anti-rust treatment. It was an organic treatment. Porsche then had a fully galvanized chassis beginning in 1975. And then we had increased use of sealers and zinc-rich paints on the lower body during the late 1970s. This is still before, in the case of the North Americans, any use of galvanized steel. Also during that time, we saw the growth of the Japanese automobile industry, the huge growth of Japanese auto production. They invaded the North American market, if you listen to the American automakers, and however, they did not foresee the rust issue. The salt usage that I showed you before was not really an issue. Cars were not doing long-distance driving in Japan. People in Japan then and now, many of them still take the train if they want to go somewhere. So the Japanese cars developed a rust reputation. The Japanese were putting on, by the early 1980s, 20 grams per square meter per side. That was really inadequate. This is a picture of a Datsun back from that period of time in the early 80s, and you can see the rust in the front end there. And the North Americans realized with the Japanese vehicles coming in, they had to also improve their quality or they were going to lose more market share. So with the efforts of people like Ken, who's here, and others in the North American steel industry, they were persuaded to use zinc-coated steel at coating weights of 50 grams per square meter per side and more. That led to the commissioning of 14 large electric galvanizing lines in North America. There were 12 of these large electric galvanizing lines in Europe and 10 in Japan. And we speak of large, we're generally speaking of tonnages in excess of 150,000 annual tons per line. Investors of the hot dip product. And we show here some of the cars of 1994 between the Chevrolet in the US, which was pure zinc electric galvanized, and then 1994 Toyota, which was zinc iron, and the Mazda, which was a zinc nickel, all electric galvanized in 1994. But electric galvanizing is an expensive process. We are limited in the capacity of the line. It's amperes that we need to put on the electric galvanized coating, so we were not really able to get the line speed up to the 200 meters per minute that we are running today. To allow for the exposed quality back then, we really didn't know that much about how to do this. Armco had a one-side coating, Usinor in the middle had its monogal coating, and Nippon Steel had sort of a coil coating arrangement where they were in the galvanizing line doing a one-sided coating. So these were rather difficult processes to use, but they served the purpose for a while with hot dip while we developed our knowledge about the hot dip galvanizing for exposed. And Ken talked about some of these points yesterday, the improvements on the lines. We compare here an old line on the left from the 1950s and 60s with a modern line where you can practically eat off the floor. Today, a very clean line, and the kinds of automation and advanced process controls and pretreatment improvements that are together with these lines that make automotive exposed possible with hot dip product. Galvanizing bath management was a key enabler of this to produce a dross-free hot dip galvanized coating in the sheet galvanizing line. We had a number of companies, the Canadian zinc producers, Cominco and Noranda, the Galvanized Albany Partnership that we run in the zinc industry together with the steel industry. And by the end of the 1990s, we were able to come up with ways of having completely dross-free baths that allowed for reliable exposed quality products to be made. And we also had during this time many lines running transitions between galvanized and galvanneal production, and so the dross minimization during those transitions also became important. We have new sensors. The laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy is a key one that has allowed us to measure the aluminum status in the bath. And as we move to zinc, aluminum, magnesium, this LIBS technology is also very important for the instrumentation of the bath to measure the coating composition.